having guests. We're going to be talking about 1986 Trick or Treat, the time capsule of the 80s that I remember like it was yesterday because I was about 6, 7, 8 years old when this movie came out. And I do remember why this film was made, and I'll explain. But before I do that, I want to explain how I got this film in my hand, because believe it or not, my son is a metalhead. He's 16, but he's been a metalhead for the past few years. His room is just covered in Ramones, Misfits, and, you know, Anthrax, all these types of posters. And I sent a video to my good friend Cody Leach, right? And he's like, your son should watch Trick or Treat. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that movie. That's back from the 80s. I've never seen it, but I do recall it. He goes, check it out. But apparently this film can't be found anywhere. It's not on any streaming service. You can't buy it on Amazon. But apparently he knew somebody, I believe, on eBay who prints these out on request. So this film is in my hands because of my good friend Cody. So Cody, I want to thank you publicly for sending this movie to me, my son. And he even said, lie to me. If you don't like it, lie to me, say you loved it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we loved it. So we saw this film a couple of months back and I enjoyed it. And I want to go ahead and explain why I enjoyed it. But again, I want to go back to why this film is a time capsule of the 80s. So let's go to that part first.
What do you want to do with your life? I want to rock!
The kids that listen to this music are killing themselves and each other because of it. The music is called heavy metal.
There is a side effect to marketing your product with a death message. And the risk is that the interpretation will be that death is the product and that the bands want you to kill yourself.
During the 80s, Tipper Gore and other political leaders saw that rock and roll was having some sort of an influence on younger kids like my age, and that they saw an increase in suicides, deaths, and just recklessness because of music. They had something, they needed to come up with something to blame it on. So it was that and Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons was supposed to be like the gateway to people finding demonic Satanism and selling their soul to become warlocks and wizards, things like that.
Began to look through the instruction manual, and I see here how to cast magical spells and mage spells and cleric spells, and you go to the pages that it's listed on, in this instance page 41, and they have complete descriptions of how to cast spells and how to contact powerful spirit, because there's both white and black magic in these books.
Same thing with heavy metal. Heavy metal at the time was gimmickly devil music. There were a lot of bands who had a lot of devil propaganda. Anthrax, there's Motley Crue, Shout Out the Devil. There's plenty of bands out there that had that kind of gimmick tied to their overall appearance. And, you know, we know as adults now, even as kids, we knew back then it was just a gimmick. We knew none of these bands were taken seriously. None of us were going to go murder anybody because of the songs we heard. Every generation, every decade, it's something. In the 90s, it was Mortal Kombat. And in the 2000s, it was Call of Duty. So parents are always trying to find something to blame for kids' behaviors instead of just blaming themselves. I'm a parent. I would never do that. So this film, believe it or not, I remember my parents telling me as a kid, stay away from the Motley Crue music. If you hear Shout at the Devil, you start praying. And I remember my cousin just played it to freak me out and just to tease me. Whenever we go over, he started playing it and I started praying the Our Father in the damn room because he knew I would do that. That motherfucker, man. Meanwhile, my parents are drinking in the other room. The trauma us Gen Xers went through is the stories I can tell you, man, my God. And then this movie Trick or Treat was made because of that paranoia. And what I love about this movie, again, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but I love it because it is a time capsule of the 80s. The music, as the parents were saying, was influencing kids to do harm. And I love in this film how the music is more or less manifesting out of the speakers and killing people or influencing things to go the wrong way. The movie stars Mark Price as Raghead, who is a local teen who's bullied, which is really odd because I don't remember any metalheads being bullied in the 80s. That's not true. So I remember that kind of being odd to me watching this film. But anyway, he loves the band led by Sammy Kerr. Sammy Kerr is, I guess, like the Axl Rose of the story. He kind of looks like him anyway. But his music, his songs connect with him. He's writing them letters all the time. And then he's just devastated when he finds out that Sammy Kerr died in a fire. He goes to this local DJ played by Gene Simmons named Nuke, who happens to have the last album. I believe the album is called Songs in the Key of Death. I don't know how I remember that. But he gives it to Raghead because he's his number one fan. And then we get the influence that all the parents are scared about being manifested and just visualized on screen, where he plays a record, you play it backwards, and you start hearing voices that influence you to do things. So that's what I love about this film above all. Again, it's not the greatest film, but I appreciate that these filmmakers and Dino De Laurentiis, everybody involved, were more or less said, let's go ahead and capture the paranoia that's all over the country right now and put it in a film. So again, if you've seen it and you're not a fan of it, I understand. You just had to be there. And I was, because I'm an old fucking bastard. And what I love about the movie, any movie that has Halloween more or less embedded in the title or in its design or in the backgrounds as they're shooting, anything fall related, anything with pumpkins will automatically get 5 points with me. But the look, the feel of the movie, it taking place in the 80s during Halloween. And also you have the soundtrack, which I've already said is one of my favorite soundtracks. And it's your typical 80s movie. You have the kid who's a loner. He's possibly bullied. He starts a relationship with this young woman. And before you know it, they go off on an adventure. And that's more or less what this movie is. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the movie does run a little long. If I was going to give this movie any cons, it does, I'd say, run 30 minutes longer than it has to. And oh my God, speaking of running, you're going to see a lot of it. The protagonist and his girlfriend at the very end are running from location to location pretty much the entire last 30 minutes of the movie, which it gets kind of exhausting and repetitive. But there's some great moments. I laughed out loud on a couple of scenes. There's 3 scenes that I love in this film, and I'll talk about them right now. There's this one scene where Raghead is getting even with his bullies because, again, he plays the record backwards, and this spirit is helping him get even with his bullies. So he sends the key bully, the main bully, right? Think Johnny and Karate Kid, a tape to hurt him, right? So once he plays the music, the spirit will come out of the tape to hurt him. But I found it confusing because Johnny's out with his girlfriend. Johnny leaves for a second. By the way, his name's not Johnny. And the girl just puts a tape in, and this green mist goes around her, and it starts to arouse her, and then some rape demon comes out. And I messaged Cody. I'm like, I'm confused. Did he send a rape demon to go hurt Johnny? I guess that's what happened. I don't know, but that's kind of a weird way to hurt your bully, right? I don't know. The next thing I love is the actual gym scene where there's the actual like Halloween dance and Sammy Kerr's playing, and he decides to go ahead and start killing kids in a fun way, which is pretty cool. And one of the key parts that really just made me laugh was if you don't know this, in the heavy metal community, the biggest insult you can call anybody is a poser. That's just the truth. And in the film, at the end of the movie, Raghead has set up a trap for Sammy Kerr, right? He's killed a lot of people. He brought him into this world. He's got to figure a way to kill him. So he set a trap. Think about the Predator when Arnold's telling the Predator, come here, kill me, do it now. So he set a trap. He's trying to bait Sammy Kerr to come out of this radio, but nothing's working. So he finally goes and says, you know what, Sammy, you're the biggest poser I've ever known. And then Sammy Kerr's like, ah! He comes out like, hey, that got him. So that was a genuine laugh. And then the ending happens, and that's all I'm going to say. So without spoiling the film, this is in my opinion, it's a time capsule of the 80s. It's a fun movie. Yes, it has its problems. It's not going to win any awards, but it's a great movie, and I enjoyed it. And if you love cheesy 80s B movie, especially heavy metal horror movies that are tied to Halloween, this is a win-win. You have to see it. And once again, Mr. Leach, thank you for the Blu-ray. It shall go amongst the shelf back there, amongst my other treasures. I enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed this review. Please like, subscribe, put some comments. I don't know if anybody's seen this, but if you have, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And happy Halloween, everybody.